Some say it's a fool's dream, but I'm not so sure. I see all your faces on my TV, driven and hungry with eyes full of tears, mourning your children, fathers and friends, caught in a war that just never ends. How long will it be till your life is mine, and all I believe in has turned into lies? With all that I am and all that I have, I send you this token, this love from my heart. Oh, I've seen a place much more than a dream, a place of such beauty it hurts just to see, a place of no pain, no crying, no war, where peace is the treasure that has been restored. If I had one wish, it would be this. It would be.
Thank you. So, Om Shanti and good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to tonight's program and a special welcome to those who are watching us from all parts of the world online. Come and be with us here in Harmony Hall. And tonight's topic is a very interesting one, working with the Divine Family. And it's my pleasure, my honor to be with Brother Charlie, who is now our big brother, like our Dada. And Brother Charlie has been with Baba since 1975, when he first started his journey in London in the very early days. After that, he moved back to Australia and has been the pillar of Australian service for all these years. And in the recent times, Brother Charlie has actually been supporting Dr. Nirmala in managing the whole region. As many of you know, he has traveled to your countries. I'm sure he's traveled to more than 100 countries. And he's so much loved by the entire Brahmin family. So thank you for being with us. And as you know, today's topic is working with the divine family. Before I ask you the questions that have come through, may I ask you if you ever felt that the family was not so divine?
I'm thinking about that. You know, I feel I was sitting today with many of Baba's children from foreign countries who've been with Baba for over 30 years, and many of us in this room were there, and it was really very touching, I felt, listening to each one. But I really felt that right from the beginning I felt so much love for this family. And I think, you know, we all love Baba, that's why we're here, and one of the greatest expressions of our love for Baba is to really embrace this family. And I think one of my lifelong learnings as a VK is to understand that incredible word, number-wise, you know. And sometimes it can sound a bit judgmental, but to me, it just says that we are all, we're very different. And if I sort of superimpose a whole set of expectations on people, then maybe the family doesn't seem very divine. But I feel if I really embrace that deep truth, and you know, my feeling, Sona, is that Brahma Baba, when Brahma Baba began, he was so intoxicated. God has come and I'm the instrument. I feel he thought everyone would be the same as him. And then he began to see that some were not so enthusiastic, some, you know, got upset easily. And it took even him time to understand that we all have our own eternal part. And I think it's only when we accept that deep truth Baba teaches us about, number-wise, we all have our own part, that the family is this amazing family. It's an incredible family. I love the variety. Personally, I love the variety in the Brahmin family, but we have all had our challenges. Anyone here not had a challenge in the Brahmin family? Can you see any hands up, Sona?
Not yet. So what you're saying, Charlie, is that the feeling of non-divinity is really my own expectation. It's not to do with our...
That all of us, when we sit in front of Bab Dada, what do we feel? You know, when Baba used to come, and most of us, I think some perhaps haven't met Baba, what was Baba's drishti like? It was just, I was sharing somewhere today that, you know, so many times I sat in front of Baba and I could see my vision of myself was here. And when you sit in front of Baba, because he sees the original part of the soul, he can see the potential. And what Baba said the other night, that Murli touched me so deeply, the Murli of the 2nd of March, when Baba said about our vision, that when our vision sees the original sanskars, in that way, that's divine vision. I have a choice. I can see the present set and maybe I react to that. But if I have the sort of wisdom or spiritual strength to see beyond that and see, you know, that each one in this room has been, you know, divine and pure for half the cycle. It's an incredible thought, really. And I've realized also that I got to a point a few years ago where I realized that I can't progress unless I see virtue in people. I really feel, you know, when you travel, you progress and you get to a point you get stuck. you feel you're not really moving forward. I feel so much of that is we can't extract ourselves from seeing what's wrong, seeing the defect, and then coming under the influence of that. And I remember one of the last Maulis Baba spoke before we stopped hearing the Maulis. Baba said at the end of one season, maybe 2017, children, it is essential to see virtue. And it's like a self-training, isn't it? What am I going to focus on? And I think for me, at one point in my journey, I made a choice to make that effort to really focus on what's the quality of rather than the defect.
I think I noticed that choice because, sometimes I'd go to Charlie with a few, not so divine vision thoughts about someone, and I noticed he wouldn't listen to that first. He would start off with praising the soul and talking about the qualities of the soul, and then come to the issue. And I suddenly realized, Charlie buys on to something else. So I think I felt that. You know how you feel someone's changed, they've shifted? Okay, so let's start with some questions that have come through in the box, the question box. Well, the first is an interesting one where someone's asking that there's the feeling that there are many unskilled people who live in our centers. This person is a professional, obviously, and says that it's taken quite a while for me to get where I am. And, I'm a skilled person and I've been vetted by my company. But here, skilled souls are often leaving Baba's service because they're fed up with endless meetings and talking and opinions that end up with very little achievement. So it feels like there are very few skilled people facing many unskilled people. Charlie, whenever I talk to you, especially when you're in Madhuban, you say, I've been in lots of meetings. So do you feel the same, that there's a lot of talking and a lot of unskilled opinions, and how does one manage this feeling of endless talk?
Once I heard a story about Queen Victoria, Queen Victoria, the English Queen, that whenever she met her ministers, she made them stand up. She sat on her throne because she knew it would be a short meeting. She was quite clever, wasn't she? A very clever administrator. I suppose my lesson has been that every Brahmin has a specialty, and some are sort of have spiritual skills, and some have sort of administrative, logic skills. Some have both, actually. And, so some are very yogi, and just, how their presence, they may not say much or do much, but their just presence is influential. Some are very jnani. Some are amazing karma yogis. And some have logic skills. And I think it really came home to me when we did the global functioning in 2007. Because if you remember, the symbol of global functioning and what actually happened, if anyone wasn't there, a lot of the senior sisters of India, zone in charges, and a lot of the seniors from around the world sat together to sort of review where we're at. And the symbol of that was the double helix of the DNA and the two strands in the DNA. And what came out was the spiritual strand is very strong. All of us have this really deep feeling for Baba, the principles, the Baba's truth. But the other strand, which is perhaps our functioning strand, which is our management, following the laws of the land, our systems, was weak. We really realized that. And what happens sometimes, we may have strong spirituality, but if we don't really have that strong sort of system or organization, then sometimes that creates a lot of conflict and problems in that way.
It can get us into trouble.
It can get us into. And I think that really came home to me, that we actually need to use all the specialties of Baba's children. And I think a lot of it is about knowing my specialty and allowing others to use their specialty. And I feel the healthiest centre is a centre where each one can express their love for Baba using their particular unique specialty. And I think, even some have skills in meetings, and I think we all know that if a meeting is not well run, in Australia, I don't know, some years ago, one sister actually ran us all through workshops on how to have a meeting, and it's actually not rocket science in one sense, but when you follow it, because when we have a meeting and one person dominates it, no one really likes it. Or when you have a meeting where people just don't stop talking, so just, having a chairperson who's empowered and then, just really managing it appropriately and bringing every voice into the room. That's what I felt. Because you know how some people will speak and some people need to be invited. And a good sort of facilitator, I don't know, brings everyone's hearts into the room. It's quite a skill. So if someone has that skill, I think it's great if hopefully the instrument person will really realise that a better quality meeting really is important.
You're reminding me of Daddy Janki and Daddy Gulzar. You must have been in meetings with them, where one is so silent, one is so Gyani.
I was amazed in the RC meetings. Daddy Gulzar used to occasionally come in. She would sit for hours listening, and I wondered, is Daddy beyond in? But when Daddy Janki would always say, Daddy, share your views, I was amazed. She'd taken in everything and so astute. And I loved the way she would see everything through a spiritual prism of how Bap Dada would see a situation. And just her presence in the meeting, so humble. It was absolutely amazing. It was wonderful. Daddy Janki, she would contribute a lot more.
Yes. Yes, Daddy had such a sharp intellect. So hopefully the person who asked this question, who obviously does have many skills, logically, also feels the spiritual skills necessary.
Some people have both, but I think so much is respecting, respect is just foundational to our service, our family, our relationships.
So now some people are questioning relationships with those who live in centres, our centerwasis, and one person is asking, what can you do if centerwasis don't want to get involved in the day-to-day running of a centre, the basic tasks that happen? I mean, is this acceptable that some centerwasis just are a bit aloof, but they live in the centre? Is it possible?
I think always, especially today, but I think, we have to be very compassionate. And even if we sit down and they may be someone quite responsible, but just ask them are you okay? Is everything okay? Because sometimes I think they feel they should be better, and then they feel bad if they're not contributing. And so at least if they can share their heart, it's good. But if they're not doing so much, sometimes people have lived in a centre 20, 30, 40 plus years. It's a long time. And perhaps some of the enthusiasm for the day-to-day tasks and stuff aren't that high. And that happens. I think it's life. And if others can pick it up, it's good. But to really respect, and what I've really loved in India, they seem to really care for those who get older. And they may not do much anymore, but once I read that the quality of an organisation is how much they look after the vulnerable. And really, when I first came to Madhaban, I was just so impressed that, who met Arjun Dada? Did anyone meet Arjun Dada? Not so many. Arjun Dada was from the beginning, but he really had quite a serious mental health problem since birth, actually. Very sweet. But he was treated like a family member, and there was a few, because sometimes, and I feel that that culture where we, some perhaps don't contribute so much, some have this, but they're a part of our family and they belong. I like that sort of culture, as long as that person allows other people to step into do what is required.
Yeah. I remember once when I was in the Blue Mountains, there was a sister who wasn't contributing much, and I complained to Daddy about it. And Daddy said, it doesn't matter, she's living in Baba's home, it's better. Don't send her away. It was a big lesson.
Yeah. Because that's the sort of, in the Lokik world, and that sometimes needs a lot of spiritual strength, doesn't it? When you have to work so hard and yet other people are beside you. And it's coming back to this deep, deep spiritual truth that we're all different. And, you know, if I'm doing actions to create my fortune, each one is playing their own part, and not to sort of have too much waste about it.
Thank you.
We all know that's a challenge at different times.
And now another centre situation where someone's asking, what happens if someone in the centre is mixing their business in the running of the centre, and it's somebody who obviously does direct sales and marketing, and they're sort of doing both businesses under the one roof?
You know, I think when the centre started around the world, we were very strict, no business in the centre. And even if someone had their own business, they had to go out, rent an office outside the centre, so that there was a clear line of what was Baba's work and spirituality. But I think since COVID that's changed, hasn't it? Because it's such a different world. And what I've really loved, I think the yagi is flexible to move with the times, and many people have to work from home. But I think that if there's a real delineation, that it's as far as possible not affecting the real spiritual side of the centre, because, you know, centres, I feel the great power of the Brahma Kumaris is our atmosphere, the atmosphere we create. Personally, I feel there's many people in the world who are much better speakers and facilitators than us. Our specialty is we can create a really divine atmosphere. And I can remember when I was in Sydney, living in a centre, this is 40 years ago, and one sister came for the course, and I opened the door and she walked in, and immediately she looked around. She said, what is this place? She just had this instant felt the vibe. Who instantly has walked in a centre and instantly felt a different vibration, can I ask? Virtually everyone in this hall. That's really our specialty, and I think that, you know, that it's our love for Baba and these vibrations, that's so precious, because I feel the atmosphere has the loudest voice. That speaks to the sanskaras, you know. The knowledge will speak to the intellect, but somehow the atmosphere touches something that's dormant inside of me. So we need to really, you know, really feel that atmosphere is incredibly precious. And I often think of it these days, the mind is like a perfume. And when your mind is really with Baba and in those elevated thoughts, it's amazing the effect of your mind on an atmosphere, on other people. Really what Baba was saying about the ancestor souls, in a sense that perfume colours the branches, the twigs and the leaves of the whole tree.
Yeah, it's like magic, isn't it? People walk in and go, you know, there's a feeling here, yeah. Now we were talking about senior citizens and people becoming older, and what happens if centre residents are growing older and they're not allowing younger people to step in, they're not delegating, especially when people hit 70, 80, 90. Sorry, you're 70. When people hit 80, 90. What can we do? I mean, what would you do if you see that things are getting stuck because the person at the top is not delegating?
You know, one of the things that I've learned about myself over the years is that when we step in from the Iron Age, my whole sense of identity is built around what I do. And I think actually the gross form of it we let go, but we rebuild it in Brahman life around service, you know. So when I'm active and I'm healthy and I can do a lot and teach and organize and plan and communicate and run meetings, it gives me a sense of who I am.
Yeah.
But when I start to get a bit older and I can't do a lot of these things, actually it can be quite an identity crisis in some way. And I think it's a real reminder that, Baba's whole teaching is built around, not so much identifying what I do, but who I am. I've got to create that incredible sense of deep spiritual identity. Because all of us at certain times in our journey are going to, roles will disappear, responsibilities, changes. But in saying that, I think, we have to have mercy once again. But I think, why don't we delegate? I think sometimes there's that, once again, identifying with what I do is really that strong sort of culture which we've had. But the most successful centres I've seen is where the sister or occasionally the brother puts others in front. I'm thinking of one centre I went to where the sister is amazing. Everyone she puts in front, and she gets so many blessings. And I remember even Baba saying that Brahma Baba, what was his act when he became Avyakt? He put all the daddies in front and he became completely incognito. And it's because sometimes we fear losing our role, but the opposite happens actually. The more you bring other people in, but can be a challenge. I think just sort of as things change, and even I think I've observed some of the older sisters as they couldn't really do what they were used to do. That sometimes you could see it has an effect on my self-identity.
Do you ever wonder about yourself? I mean, thank God you're very healthy, you travel a lot, more than most of us. But at some point, if you have to delegate a lot of your roles, how would you feel? Because you carry a big load for the Yajna, we know that. You're very responsible.
Yeah, I think I would like to think that I really feel it's so important to bring people into the fold. I mean, to be very open, I've worked with Didi Nirmala for a long time and she was so active and hands-on, but I think she's very gracefully moving into a role. And in a sense, how some, just their presence is all you need. I remember Baba talking to Daddy Nirmala Shanta, and Baba said, you don't have to do anything, just be there, and everyone will be happy.
Well, we certainly feel it with Didi.
Yeah.
She's here, we feel her presence, don't we?
That's right,
Yeah.
and I think we should really value that. I haven't really got my head into where I will. But as it is now, people, I think my life changes all the time and people are taking up responsibility and I love to see that.
You feel okay with the fact that you're stepping into a different role, so they're taking on a lot of the things that you used to do?
And I'm very aware, I had a really big realization many years ago, there's some things I can do okay, but there's many things I'm not good at. So it's fine. I'm really happy if other people do things because there's some things I'm really not good at. And and I think if you have that self-respect to know your own specialties and your own capacity and allow others to use their specialty, because it feels like we're all working for one greater thing, like getting my head into a lot of legal things and statutory things isn't not the love of my life, to tell you. But other people are so good at it and can get their head around it, so I'm really happy for that.
So now we move to the life of someone who is a student at a centre and is saying, how can I create a balance between Lokik and alokik responsibilities, especially when the centre in charge has assigned me with a lot of tasks? How do you balance that, and how do you politely say no, I guess? At what level do you have to say, no, I now need to put Lokik family first?
I think so much of our Brahman life is built around regaining our self-respect. Because when we have self-respect, we learn how to say no with love and respect. Because sometimes what I do, if someone asks me, can you do something? And I often will say, I'm sorry, I can't at the moment, but I can next week. Or something like that. So it's not no, no, no in a sense. Or sometimes actually this person is much more capable at this than me, or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think, it's really lovely to say Haji, but it shouldn't be Haji to the detriment of my mental, emotional and physical well-being. I think that's just crucial to Brahman life. And so sometimes, we have to say, no, it's not possible for me to do that. Because I think sometimes we come into Gyan and we just baba, 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 baba. And then we get complaints from family or work that, someone was just telling me yesterday or today maybe, not sure that she was going to work, getting up at Amrit Vela, but by afternoon, what was happening? She was feeling a bit sleepy at work. It's not a good image in front of your colleagues and so on. So it's and everyone has their own unique balance, and that's my self-respect, to find my capacity in what I can do and not compare with others. Because I remember once I lived in a retreat center, and there was one brother there, and he did hard physical work during the day, and he would only sleep 3 or 4 hours a night, and I never saw him sleepy in meditation.
Amazing.
So everyone's different, yet we can't compare. We actually have to have the self-respect to sustain me, my responsibilities to myself, really first, to my family, to my work and to service. What's my unique balance? And each one has to find it. We can't really compare myself with others.
That's tricky, Charlie, because the Brahma Kumaris has a strong culture of Haji. It comes in the Murlis as well. Don't ever say Naji, you must say Haji to everything that you're asked to do. And sometimes it can actually feel like I'm letting Baba down.
Yeah. But that's why it's a self-respect issue, because when you're in your self-respect, as I was saying, you can say, I'd love to do it, but actually I have a family commitment that I need to be there, or actually I'm not well, I can do it, or defer it. That's what I say. I rarely say no, but I will say, I can do it, but would you mind later in the day or in a week's time or whatever. So it's not just no, but it's actually... Yeah, I think that when we start, we often feel that compulsion to please. I think, most of us have been people pleasers. Who's a people pleaser? Yeah. I got a few quick hands up there. It's the nature of everyone. We have no self-respect, so if I get respect from others, and sometimes we become beggars of approval, so we push ourselves to an extreme. And that's not good. And I think if instruments see that, sometimes instruments say, no, you don't do this now, go home and rest.
Yeah.
And I find some instruments are really lovely like that, they can see. Because I think if the care for the person is the priority, really to care for the person, that's the priority rather than the service getting finished.
I like that, because I think maybe some of us have felt that feeling of guilt, that I said no.
Yeah.
And, then you beat yourself up for saying no, and then you say yes again, and then you get too tired, and then it sort of goes round in circles. So I think that lets us have a bit of breathing space in our lives. Someone is asking, Charlie, if I feel a sense of belonging to a Brahmin, a brother or a sister, is this attachment? Because with other Brahmins, I can see them as kind of genderless and I feel neutral towards them. But with some Brahmins, there seems to be more of a, maybe it's the word familiarity that we use in Brahmin life, or connection, attraction. Yeah, it's natural, isn't it? I remember coming to Baba and I felt closer to some souls who nurtured me and sustained me than I did to others. Possibly the feeling's gone now, but how does one handle that?
No, excuse my throat. When I started, I remember the first few times I came to Madhaban and meeting the daddies seemed genderless. Did you have that experience? That I didn't think of them as really male or female and I really realized when you really practice to be a soul and you don't really carry that really strong identify with your gender, then people get that feeling from you. But when we listened to the Moli the other night, what did Baba say? Baba was saying that actually the ancestor souls give a sense of belonging to the whole tree. Belonging, I remember once Daddy, or even Baba said, the quality of the 8 jewels is that everyone feels this one belongs to me. That really lovely feeling. But I suppose that I feel belonging is intrinsic sanskara, like peace is our original sanskara. Belonging is also, because I think the greatest sorrow for most people is when they don't feel they belong, they feel disconnected, they feel lost, they feel alone. It's probably the greatest pain in a human life. So giving those feelings, and in Brahman life, it's a whole education that my belonging is clean, is pure, and it takes time. Sometimes it's a little bit attraction or attachment, but I think that if we're really honest with myself, try to be really honest, is that feeling of closeness and belonging, attraction or attachment. And if it is, don't overreact. Just, okay, let me just be aware. But can I really learn how to feel that? And I didn't know what are the signs. Maybe, if I have a big problem. I remember once Baba said, if you have a really big problem or obstacle, where's the first destination of your intellect?
Is it Baba or someone else?
Yeah, is it Baba? And that's when Baba said, something like that. But I also feel not to, because sometimes fearing attachment, we become a bit too cold and aloof.
Yeah.
And really, I feel that it's a huge. Finding this wonderful merging of love and detachment is it's the pinnacle of spirituality in a way. So it's a learning curve, I think.
So, Charlie Bai, you came to Gyan with Brother Ken so many years ago, and you've known Ken even before. When you see Ken after a year, do you feel, oh, my beloved brother? Like, is there more of a feeling than you'd have with somebody else? I mean, honestly.
Not really. I'm very honest. But I feel close to many people, but I don't miss them. I love them when they're around, but I don't miss people. I don't feel I miss people. I love their company, but when I move away, I don't have that sense of. But I really love the company of people, and I love the company of Brahmins, and I really more and more appreciate. When we follow purity, the atmosphere we create is totally unique. I mean, all of us have had challenges in the Brahmin family, but it's such a extraordinary family we belong to. It really is the family of God, and it's very precious.
So could you say you're perhaps equidistant from everyone now? Kind of? Almost?
Kind of, almost. I think so. I don't feel dependent on, but I feel close to everyone, but I don't feel dependent on anyone. But if I get older, let's see. Because sometimes I think that may bring out, some needs for support. And, I travelled once to Ahmedabad with Hansaben, and she told me, how, imagine how supporting she was of Daddy. Wasn't she extraordinary? And often Daddy would say to her, I'm not going to feel dependent on you. She would tell her openly. So really, Daddy tried to keep that loving relationship, that love and detachment, which I think is, as I said, I was talking somewhere today. I remember once Baba said, to be truly loving, you have to be detached.
Yes.
Why? Because when you're detached, Baba said you can love someone when they're good. We all love someone when they're light and sweet and cooperative. When the family goes through their ups and downs, and we all know in our centres, some of our family, they go through rough patches. And if we get affected and have bad feelings for them, it's not real support. But I think, when we continue to have that good wishes when someone goes through their rough patches, that's a massive sort of spiritual support. Because I've sometimes thought there's two types of support. There's emotional support and spiritual support. And emotional support is more like when someone's struggling and you sit with them and you encourage them, and that's good. But often 2 days later they come back with the same thing. But spiritual support is holding their value in your attitude. And that the daddies were incredible. To me, Daddy G, I don't know, she just had she saw the value, held the value of everyone in her attitude. To me, that's spiritual support. They just get this vibration of love, care and respect in a sense. And that's a huge support for people.
It's like they hand it over to Baba, don't they? They hand you over to Baba whilst they care for you.
Yeah, because they're detached from you, they don't get affected by your moods and your ups and downs, so they can really care for you and give you that sort of spiritual support, that goodwill, which is invaluable when you've lost your self-confidence or your self-respect or something.
Well, on that topic of, how do you deal with people when they don't like you? Someone's asked, have you ever had someone dislike you, disagree with you, or criticize you?
Of course.
I remember being upset with Charlie Bye 20 years ago. How did you handle it? Or how do you handle it, even now?
Yeah, well, I was sharing in the NCCC, once I was in Melbourne and I was asked to move to Sydney in 1980. And when I moved to Sydney, there was a brother's house, a Pandav Bhavan, as we called it, and there was a lot of dramas going on there. And they weren't very happy with me, and when I met Baba in the history hall, I sat in front of Baba, and Baba would always meet with Drishti, and then Baba said, "Is everyone happy with you?" I didn't answer the question, but Baba, this is what spiritual support is. Baba said to me, because he knew it had affected me, and Baba said, "Don't worry, some aren't happy with Baba." And then Baba went on, and Baba explained that some think, oh, Baba met this one for 10 minutes and me for only 3 minutes. Or Baba gave this one such a great blessing, my blessing wasn't as good, this sort of thing. But it used to affect me, because I think probably the greatest vulnerability for all of us is, to be rejected. I think that's in human relationships, if someone rejects you. Once Daddy Janki said that's the most tamo pradhan of all sanskaras, to reject another person. And often we even do it to ourselves as well. And so it used to affect me a lot. But I think the years of doing service, and once someone wasn't happy with me, and I realised that I became a slave to that person's, because I would think about a lot. It's like I bowed down and thought about that, and it wasn't fair.
Fear? Bit of fear in there?
Fear. It's fear, yeah. And I really had such a realisation, and I think that's changed a lot in me now. So it doesn't worry me as much. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but... So I'm not evaluating myself through the eyes of other people. It's more, through how Baba sees me rather than through others' perception.
And if we turn the question around, have you ever had that feeling towards other seniors where you've disagreed with them and you think, this isn't on and this is not right? And how do you handle that feeling within you?
I think differences are normal. It's absolutely normal. We're different. But it's how we handle differences which is the big thing. And I remember, a lot of you work in the corporate world, and in the corporate world they have, I know Judy will know much more about this than me, But you know, the 4 phases of groups, and it's quite good really, because forming, storming, norming and performing. And the big thing is that when we form, we have superficial relationships. We're very nice to each other, but it's not meaningful and deep. And then differences will emerge. It's absolutely natural because we are different. We think differently. Our perception of life and reality, but it is different. So, but how do I react? Do I go to my old story, feel offended, feel hurt, blame, fall back into my old body conscious thinking? Or do I apply Gyan? Do I really apply? And I think what they often used to say is moving from storming to norming is accepting difference. And I think that's a big thing for us in the BKs because we are different. We all follow Srimat, but people are different. Some are fully engaged with Baba and Brahman life, some are partially engaged, some do. Everyone lives their Brahman life according to their understanding. And I think it's a healthy culture when we accept difference. And I found for me, the more I can accept myself, I can accept others. If I'm struggling to accept other people, it's usually I'm still struggling to accept me and my part as well.
So what happens if you have a disagreement with a senior? Do you usually just do what they tell you to do, or do you say what you feel, or do you have a conversation? Or
I probably... I think when I was first started, I probably kept things inside myself. But I think I'm learning to express more. So it's more how I express than what I express. Because I've realized that I think relationship is all about communication and feelings. We're all, especially we Brahmins, we just are so tuned into vibrations. And I really feel it's not worth saying something to others unless I have good feelings behind it.
Yeah.
Because even if there's 2% irritation, anger, negativity, I think hearts will grow distant. And I can't see the point of that when the hearts really grow distant. Especially today, I think that it's such a huge family, we're so different. And sometimes me thinking I'm sort of correcting a bad situation, I give a lot of sorrow to other people. We can do that. And I remember when I started, the culture was to pull our ears. When we made a mistake, they would directly say, that's wrong, you should do it this way. In the 1980s, Baba began to say, correction breaks connection.
Yeah.
There was a saying, and Baba said it in English. And we, and sometimes, but I think if there can be a relationship where you can have differences without breaking a relationship. That's a healthy relationship to me. But not all are like that. And so you just have to have your third eye open and tune into the person and just see. Because there will be differences, and I think it's normal. It's just if we take offense, I used to have this little saying for myself, only my ego accepts sorrow, that if I'm being hurt by something, I'm under the influence of my false self, I'm being deceived.
It's not to do with them.
It's not to do with them. But sometimes we forget that too. Because we are so programmed for 2,500 years to be so sensitive sometimes. And Baba I remember Baba in the Saka days, Daddy Janki said that Baba wasn't that merciful. Well, Baba's always merciful in one way, but when souls were too delicate and sensitive, Baba would say, grow up. You've got a baby intellect. Baba could be quite forthright.
Well, Baba wanted us to mature.
He wanted us to, grow up in a way. Not be too over-delicate or sensitive.
Another interesting question for you personally is, in your position with your responsibility in the Yajna now, how do you stay humble? Do you remind yourself to be humble? Or is it just something that's become part of your nature now? Because you're dealing with a lot of people who are senior to you, junior to you, your peers.
Well, I don't know really what to say about that, but you know, I think Daddy Prakashmani, I just found an extraordinary inspiration because she was totally humble. And, you know, she would just, if you're sitting around at a table, she'd just sit down with you and chat with you like a friend. You know, once I was in Texas, I remember I went on a little tour of America with Daddyji, and I was sitting in the garden talking to a brother, and then someone came up and whacked him on the back and he almost fell out of his chair, and it was Daddyji. I mean, she was so much fun. She didn't have the sense, oh, I'm in charge of... And I really love that. And Daddyji's whole, for me, what I learned from her, because she had such incredible self-respect, she could give respect to everyone. And she was so humble in that. I think that self-respect, the result of that is humility. And it's incredibly powerful when you can remain, you know, especially in a leader. I think if someone is instrumental and they're that humble. And you know, once we were on a retreat in Australia with Daddyji in the 1980s, and a group of us said, Daddy, how can you manage this huge yagya? How do you manage with all the personalities, just tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands? And you know, I remember 3 things she said. First, I listen, then I teach. And that's such wisdom, isn't it? Listen to the heart. Just listen, not before you start giving advice or whatever.
To feel the soul.
Yeah. And then she said a brilliant thing, I never control. Because I think a lot of us confuse leadership with control. I'm the boss. No, I think that's the biggest mistake. The more you control, the law says, the more you'll push people away. And a lot of us control, because when we see things go wrong in our centre, we think, oh, I'm responsible, I have to control it. So you come down a bit heavy, and all that does is...
Because you feel it reflects on you.
Yeah,
The
that's
centre's
right.
not going, well, it's my fault.
Oh, you think this is Baba's centre and this is going on, so I get a bit heavy-handed. But Daddy said, I never try to control, I give freedom. And that was her incredible wisdom, because she said, when you give freedom, people come close to you. And then they will listen to you. When they're close and they have that love or they have that trust, they will say, Daddy, you know, what should I do? And then they will listen to her advice. And the third thing she said, I trust everyone. Amazing. And I remember someone said, Daddy, can you really trust everyone? She said, I... And what she said, I invest trust, because when you invest trust in someone, they really don't want to break that. And so it's precious when someone you really love trusts you. You really want to live up to that.
It's not easy when people do things that it break your trust, and then to bring it back again. I mean, you must have had many of those situations where you want to trust someone again, and it's good to, because you want to bring them in.
That's true.
So, you know, how do you go past their defects and their mistakes and let them into your heart again?
Yeah, but it's... You know, we all know it's easy to talk about theoretically, but individual situations, there's always different dynamics. But my experience is I saw Daddies often be quite firm with people, but she was always sweet. She always maintained respect. So even when people, she didn't break relationship with a sort of a harsh vibration or a negative vibration. That was my observation anyway.
I've heard that in Madhuban, if you do something extremely wrong, you might be sent home for a year, but then you're allowed to come back, which is very sweet. If you ask for forgiveness and you've, you know, realized.
Had a realization.
And someone's asking, well, what if someone does have lots of responsibilities, but also has a very big ego? How do we then act or interact with such a person? If we always obey them, then we support their ego. If we oppose and disagree, it creates conflicts. So you can see the ego, the I, but we do need to keep working together. How humble can you be?
You know, sometimes people feel humility is weakness, and if you're too humble, people will I think, humble people can also be firm. You can be like Daddy Prakashmani was. But, they're not easy, those sort of situations. But I do feel it's your vibrations which really count. And so if someone is, I don't know, feeling I'm in charge of everything and everything has to come through me and that sort of thing, I think if I really maintain respect for the soul and speak from that place and try and express, even if I have a different view, see. And if that doesn't work, then even try and, sit down with them and just express that I would really love to get more involved, love to help, but sometimes I feel this when this happens, without sort of pointing a finger and blaming and that. And if it still doesn't work, then I think sometimes to sit with a neutral third party and try and, work through things, because they're difficult conversations, and it's easy to be theoretical about it, but because I think probably I was a person who avoided conflict, so I didn't want to have those conversations, but sometimes you have to.
Yes.
And I really observe that if my feelings are good, then 80 to 90% will be okay. If you really don't fall into sort of negative thoughts and negative feelings about the individual. But,
and the Yagya now has people, don't they, who can help with all this facilitation.
And really I think that's another skill that, because when we did global functioning, probably the main area that came through, we had 7 groups, was dealing with differences. And I'm looking at Judy once again because she got involved in that. But we aren't that good at that, because we're so idealistic. Baba says children have good wishes for everyone, love everyone, and that sort of thing. And sometimes I think when relationships aren't good, deep down I feel I'm a failure. I can't have a good relationship. So rather than take the responsibility of that failure, I put it on the other person. And I think so much of our transformation is within the Brahmin family. And sometimes I think, what's the role of the Brahmin family? The Brahmin family will make me pure. And if I live in the heart of the Brahmin family, there will be ups and downs and differences will emerge. But if I really respond with spirituality rather than my old emotional hurt and taking sorrow, then, if I can maintain good relationships with the majority, I know my sanskaras have changed, But I sometimes think, how do I conquer ego? To me, live in the heart of the Brahmin family.
It feels like hard work now.
But really, because, people will give me feedback and that sort of thing, and if we reject it, sometimes it's people's projections, but sometimes it's real. And, to have the wisdom to, what am I here for? I'm here to change, to learn about myself, not be defensive. Easy to say once again, because the programming is to be quite defensive whenever my self-esteem is low and people are putting me down.
But it's not easy to say, look, I failed, I made a mistake. For many cultures, we're brought up to create a facade and look good.
Yeah.
You know it's a mistake, but it's not nice for others to know.
Yeah.
And what will the community say? And what will the Brahmin family say? And what will my Lokik family say? And it's just not in our blood. For some cultures, it's okay. It's not always easy.
But all the layers of body consciousness, how many are there? Saving face is such a big layer of body consciousness, And I think sometimes, just to say, yes, I made a mistake, it didn't work. And I can remember I used to have this thing many years ago, on the journey trying to build more self-respect. It doesn't matter if I'm criticized, it will happen. But what matters is if that criticism changes how I feel about myself. So I'm dancing to the tune of other people. It doesn't matter if I fail. We all fail at different things. What matters is if that failure keeps denting my self-respect. And it doesn't matter even if I make maybe, a small mistake in things. It's normal. Life is like that. If I can learn by it and not keep it denting how I feel about myself.
Which takes me to a question that's come online, from online. The person says, if I let go of Baba's hand and then repent and come back, Baba accepts me, but what about the family? And how can we trust that the family will continue to have divine vision?
I started my Brahmin life in London with a Lokik friend of mine, and such a special brother, and he was really loved by all the daddies. And once I came to Madhaban and I met Daddy Prakashmani, he moved away from Baba, and Daddy said, "Where is this brother?" I said, "Daddy, he's got married." And I can remember Daddy said, "Oh, my lovely brother." The way she said it was just, and it wasn't disapproval or anything like that. It was just, she really had that love for that soul. And, I feel that people, that's where each one has their own unique story. And if people move away, I feel, spirituality is to just maintain that love and goodwill for everybody.
I feel there's a word that Charlie's saying again and again and again, whether saying it or feeling it, it's just acceptance.
Yeah.
Accepting everyone.
Well, you have to. I mean, we're serving the whole world, 8 billion human souls, Baba said the other day. Wasn't that so powerful, that Murli? And if we can't accept our own family, will we be able to accept? There's such a variety of...
Yeah, but it's easier to accept them than...
Sometimes it is, those who are close to you. But it's a big learning curve, and I think as we mature, we decide what I need to do, how I need to behave, how I want to live. But how you want to live is... Srimat, all the knowledge. If you've decided to live in this way, then what can I do? Why should I have waste thoughts about it? Sometimes we can become over-religious, I feel, and religious... someone once said to me that religious people are famous for being intolerant. Because, because they have these standards, they can be so judgmental of each other. And, I think... I remember once actually in Pandav Bhavan, maybe in the 80s, Bhagwan Rajneesh? Do you know that he was a big guru? And one of his followers came, he was a double foreigner to Madhaban, and he was a very warm-hearted person, but everyone he met, he just gave them a big hug. Sisters, brothers, daddies, anyone. And quite honestly, some were having a lot of waste, because that's not really the Brahman Maryada. And in the Murli, Baba said, "Do you accept everyone, even if they wear saffron robes? Do you have that vision of my brother?"
Because there's some who won't even come near a sister. It's the opposite. They won't even take a gift from a daddy. Yeah. Which seems so disrespectful. Daddy's so elderly and she's giving with so much love, and they're like, no, it's a woman. Yeah.
He was just very, very friendly, And I suppose because of our principles of purity and everything like that, some were sort of having waste. But Baba was saying, Baba talked about it, and we all knew who it was, that, our brotherly vision has to be for everybody, and even those who agree with us, those who don't agree with us, those who are a completely different path or lifestyle. Why should we feel threatened if they think differently or behave differently? That's, to me, real spirituality.
Now, this is a tricky one. I'm sure it's documented somewhere in our Brahmin books, but how do we deal with mental health conditions, especially bipolar issues, if people with mental health conditions in our divine family come to centers and create issues?
It's... The World Health Organization, from what I understand, says that 1 in 4 in this world has a mental health condition. And I think this is We should be, I think, quite merciful, quite understanding, and not take the law into our own hands, because there's people who have a lot of skill. This is where we need the skills of certain people, how to help them. Because sometimes we don't really know what to do, and we make judgments. And that's where, for me, there's a few people in Australia who are counsellors, psychologists, etc. And so at first I probably tried to do things myself, but now I will always refer them, because they really give a plan of care, showing that care, but how to help the person. Because sometimes I remember once that we often tolerate extremely inappropriate behaviour, because we think, oh, Baba says tolerate, but that's not really and actually that doesn't help the person. Sometimes they need help to know how to behave, and boundaries.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people here who know a lot more about that. But once again, if we become very judgmental because people have behavioural issues or mental health issues, that's where I think, sometimes we really have to, some behaviour is really totally inappropriate, and we have to act, there's no doubt. But I think if people feel the Brahma Kumaris have a big heart, and we help people who are vulnerable, but some definitely need professional help.
Yeah.
And I remember we talked about in the NCCCs years ago that we're not professionals. No. We teach meditation. Because we teach meditation doesn't mean we know how to manage mental health, because sometimes we think we do, but it's best it's professional people look after it.
Well, there's a difference between just gentle depression and psychosis and neurosis. So somebody's asking if we like to see others also experience this life of soul consciousness and Baba, whether Lokik people, alokik people. How does one help to remove obstacles in people's ways? Can we even do that to bring them closer to Baba? Do we just stay detached and observe? Do we have more yoga for them, or positive thoughts? Do we just become an example for them to follow, or all of the above?
My feeling is change yourself. We have to be a detached observer, because we can't change anyone, and we can't dictate how they will be, or whether they're going to become a BK or not. We make effort, we give love, and then we just become a detached observer and accept what is. It is what it is. Each one's part is eternal, and you just have to accept it in a way. We can't control anybody ultimately.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? The fine line between having the boundaries and reaching out to people and bringing them in, and then managing their sanskars. And which brings me to the last question in the box. And perhaps if anyone's got a burning question out there, we will put a microphone on the stage, and maybe we have time for just one or two questions. But this question is, how are the signals of a divine intellect or a divine soul recognized? How do you recognize such a soul? What would their sanskars look like in service with divine soul?
I think the lights are going down. I think we're getting a hint that I feel that so divinity in service is really, service becomes an expression of my love for Baba to me. And it's not about me gaining something, me getting respect or whatever. It's really, when there's the intent is so clean that service is ultimately an expression of my love for Baba. And that's what I think of Daddy Jenki. She was just amazing, the service she did, because she had such deep love for Baba and just feels it's really Baba's work. And I used to feel responsible for things that went on in the centre, but I really, really practiced. It's Baba's centre, they're Baba's children. I do what I can, but I can't feel burdened by it, Because sometimes, I feel I have to fix. I have to fix everything, and sometimes you can't. You can't fix everything. And sometimes you have, some situations do go on. We can't, sometimes there's just these karmic things going on, and we just have to really we try, but then we become that detached observer again. There's not a lot we can do. We have to accept.
I remember you saying to me once that you can help a soul, but unless they take that help and change themselves, the karma wheel won't change.
Yeah, that's right.
So is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question? If you'd like to step forward and take the microphone, and just be aware that if you do come forward, people online will be watching you, so you are being filmed. Is there anyone who'd like to ask something?
Maybe it's 10 past, we should have some meditation.
Looks like you've satisfied everyone, Charlie. In that case, maybe we'll just go into meditation, and Charlie Bai will lead meditation. You're welcome to, even if you're online, stay for the next 20 minutes and take drishti, divine drishti from our divine brother. So thank you very, very much for a very practical and heartfelt session. Shouldn't we just change you?
तब आँखों में समाया